right, so staying in the theme of Brazil, we'll be looking at the biggest corruption scandal in Latin America's history. This is, yeah, so like I said, we're going to be taking and looking at more of stuff from other countries. After the Brazilian hip hop group, after we reacting to them, and yeah, we got some, I don't know, doing a little bit of digging on my own outside of that and some of the commentary on the video itself. Yeah, we're gonna be looking at some stuff. So this right here, it seems corruption has been a big thing in Brazil. So we're gonna be looking at this. Let's go ahead and get into it, shall we?
This is Comperj, the biggest petrochemical complex in Brazil. It's located in Itaboraí, a small city in the state of Rio de Janeiro. The multi-billion-dollar project launched in 2008, and the plan was to open in 2011. Thousands of Brazilians moved there to work. But it's 2018, and Comperj never opened. Construction of the complex stopped in 2015, after it became a symbol of the largest corruption scandal in Brazil's history, Operation Car Wash. Hundreds of prominent Brazilians, including CEOs, members of Congress, and even a former president, have been implicated. Some of Brazil's largest companies lost billions of dollars, and the country slid further into a recession. 4 years.
Wait, so okay, this is massive then, especially being reaching that far at the top. Anytime you have, bro, for it to be that bad enough that company stocks start falling, and there's Jesus Christ, dude.
Years since it broke, the scandal is still rippling through Brazil, leaving places like Itaboraí devastated in its wake.
Quando você acha que está indo bem, é aí que você tem que abrir os olhos, porque vai de mal a pior.
Isso tudo nós aqui sabíamos que isso ia acontecer. Uma hora ou outra isso aí ia vir à tona aí, e o que aconteceu foi isso.
Trabalhei 1 ano e 4 meses lá dentro do Comperj e foi a gota d'água, foi quando acabou.
When things are going well, open your eyes. Well, poor folks, man. For it to take and not only have an effect on the entire country's economy, but the city that I guess is supposed to be in or close to it. I'm sure it probably was a boost with people moving there, and then nothing happening. No, in the a scandal break like that's got to be. Because what are the people that move there to work, or what happens to them? How many local people are, I'm sure a lot of them probably were working on building the plant, and it's, bro, that's...
Itaboraí was the perfect place for one of Brazil's most ambitious energy projects. It had the space for 2 refineries and a petrochemical plant, spanning 45 square kilometers. It's also close to Brazil's newly discovered natural gas fields off the coast of Rio and Sao Paulo.
That would have been, being that close to offshore wells like that, a straight pipeline, probably within a couple, probably within 100 or, 200 miles, depending on how far offshore those things are. That would have been a massive boon.
When the project launched, it was estimated that Comperj would generate 200,000 direct and indirect jobs in the area.
Holy Jesus!
Itaboraí became a boomtown. In 2010, 50,000 people moved there, 160 new businesses opened, and the population grew by over 16%. But 1,200 kilometers away, police broke a case that would doom Comperj. In 2012, they had this gas station in Brasilia under surveillance. They suspected it was being used to launder money. Criminals would bring in illegal cash, report it as gas station earnings, and then funnel the cash to someone else, making the money hard to trace back. The police arrested a known money launderer, Alberto Youssef, and offered him a plea deal in exchange for the source of the money. But he warned his lawyers, "If I speak, the republic is going to fall." Youssef testified.
That's... If I speak, the republic is going to fall. There's so much I could say right now. Like, it's just... I'm sure there's more than a few places they could do that with here in the U.S. And I say that, but unlike Brazil, where there's people actually get charged. They can't even find, who owned Hunter Biden's cocaine in the White House.
Testified that he was laundering money not for criminals, but for top executives at Petrobras, Brazil's state-owned oil company. Petrobras was the largest oil company in Latin America. It also owned Comperj. The police launched a massive investigation, Operation Car Wash, and soon discovered Petrobras was at the center of an intricate corruption scheme. The company used its projects to enrich criminals, engineering companies, and Brazilian government officials. Here's how it worked in the Comperj project. When Petrobras needed to build the complex, it started a bidding process for the job. Typically, engineering firms would compete for the contract, driving down the price for Petrobras. But a group of these companies got together and formed an agreement. Instead of competing against each other, they cooperated to fix prices and take turns accepting projects. Odebrecht, the biggest firm and ringleader of this cartel, won some of the major contracts to build Comperj. This allowed Odebrecht to overcharge Petrobras and profit immensely. The original cost for Comperj was about $6 billion, but by 2015, Petrobras had paid at least $14 billion. Odebrecht then money laundered some of its profits through outside businesses, like the gas station, before paying bribes to Petrobras executives and politicians. These executives would take the bribes as an incentive to keep giving contracts exclusively to the cartel. Politicians took the bribes.
They were making money hand over fist. And the fact that so many construction companies were involved in it, I'm sure they all got kickbacks too from, oh my God, dude. Wow. What?
In exchange for their influence over Petrobras, like Rio de Janeiro State Governor Sergio Cabral, who received more than $800,000 to give Comperj contracts to a firm in the cartel. This also became an important funding source for their re-election campaigns.
Brazil's Petrobras, one of the world's biggest oil companies, in a heap of trouble.
The company is in the midst of an escalating corruption scandal.
After the scandal broke, Petrobras and the engineering companies were in trouble. Over 24 executives were initially arrested. Compounded by falling oil prices, Petrobras lost half of its stock value between September 2014 and January 2015.
Jesus
Construction
Christ,
on
dude.
Comperj was incomplete when 13,000 workers were laid off. Today in Itaboraí, 40,000 people are signed up for the city's employment program. An average of 250 people line up here in search of odd jobs.
As pessoas, a maioria, vira à noite sim. Fica aqui para poder garantir a sua vaga aqui. Geralmente aqui é...
I'm going to assume that at this point, this far out, like, I'm going to assume that after all of this went down and so many people lost their jobs, that probably, I'm going to venture a guess that 160 businesses come to the town, right? So I'm going to venture a guess that a lot of those businesses had to take and close their doors. A lot of the people now can't take and buy stuff they could buy before. I'm going to guess that a good number of people all of a sudden are in poverty and the crime rates went up. Bro.
É 300, 500 pessoas já teve aqui para poder pegar a senha. Só que só são 300 senhas distribuídas.
Many of these unemployed residents used to work at Comperj.
Como eu ainda trabalhei lá 2 anos no Comperj, então eu tive muita oportunidade. É um lugar em que você pode até crescer um pouco a sua estabilidade de emprego, entendeu?
Eu vim de Cabo Frio na esperança de trabalhar no Comperj, no polo petroquímico, sendo que já tinham me falado das vagas. Aí eu saí, me mudei, vim morar aqui, né? Hoje eu sou morador daqui.
The massive layoffs at Comperj affected the rest of the city as well.
Eu fui montar um restaurante lá na entrada do Comperj, na entrada mesmo, na principal do Comperj. E ali, por dia, era 400 refeições.
Holy crap,
E
400 meals?
vendia. Todo dia, café da manhã, às vezes até janta e tudo. Quando chegou 2013, o Comperj fez isso só. Parou tudo, restaurante não tinha mais ninguém, começou a ficar deserto.
With Brazil's economy still trying to recover from a recession, Itaboraí has found it hard to bounce back on its own. Today, some limited construction is planned to resume at Comperj after Chinese and Brazilian firms partnered with Petrobras. The natural gas unit is expected to open there in 2020, but this would only create about 5,000 jobs. And the problem is, the closing of Comperj and the devastation of Itaboraí is not an isolated incident. It happened all over Brazil and all over Latin America. Operation Car Wash successfully revealed systemic corruption in Brazil. Car Wash put ex-President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in jail, contributed to the downfall of his successor Dilma Rousseff, and a related investigation has led to her successor, Michel Temer, being charged for corruption.
Bro.
The ex-CEO of Odebrecht was sentenced to 19 years in prison, and E.K. Batista, once Brazil's richest man, was sentenced to 30 years. But the same companies were funding major infrastructure projects all over Brazil, so the scandal brought many to an abrupt stop. Like this nuclear power plant in Angra dos Reis, for instance. Like Comperj, it was halted in 2015 because of direct involvement in the car wash scheme. $60 million in bribes were paid out of the project's funding. By 2016,
Jesus
11 projects
Christ,
were
dude.
reportedly stalled in Brazil alone.
The ripple effects off of this is absolutely insane. And as much as it's, far as the amount of people that are involved in this at the higher levels, I can't imagine the amount of just everyday citizens that were affected by this who are working on these things. 11 stalled projects. So the petrochemical plant plus nuclear power plant halted. Just that's a wrap. And even with the petrochemical being bought up by a Chinese firm, and only 5,000 of the 200,000 that were jobs projected returned. That's absolutely insane. Holy
It didn't stop there. The engineering companies involved worked all over Latin America, and in 2016, 17 projects were reportedly stalled in at least 7 countries. Like this irrigation project in Peru, where 3 former presidents have been accused of taking bribes from Odebrecht.
What?
In Colombia, this river dredging project was stopped after Odebrecht admitted to paying $11 million in bribes. And in Venezuela, at least 23 infrastructure projects have been suspended. These stalled projects mean lots of layoffs. A report estimates the car wash scandal wiped out 500,000 jobs in Brazil alone. Over 4 years after the scandal broke, Brazil's unemployment is still high. Operation Car Wash is a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it's uncovering systemic corruption that has plagued Brazil for decades. But on the other, it's threatening Brazil's democracy. For many, the prosecution of prominent leaders, especially Lula.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Talking about threatening Brazil's democracy, kind of like here in the U.S., everybody's like, "Oh, democracy, democracy." Got it. We don't even. Do we really have that anymore? I mean, we're so mired in corruption here that you vote for cyanide or basically, lethal injection. Like, that's just the options that we have for everything here, and everything's just so. Do we really have a democracy anymore? And with it going so deep, 500,000 jobs, but 500,000 jobs. That's so many people that are affected by it just at the regular citizen level. But you throw in the amount of people within government and higher level of business that are, do you really have a democracy? It's more of you just call it the aristocracy, basically, of the country. Absolutely sickening. Absolutely sickening.
Who was imprisoned at the time when he was leading in the election polls, has revealed a bias in Brazil's judicial system. The elections are now the most divisive in the country's history, with many losing their faith in their political leaders.
Hoje em dia nós não sabemos quem é. A pessoa hoje em dia ela vem disfarçada. Do que ela fez, a pessoa vai procurar e ela não atende.
I feel for the people, because that's just 500,000 people. That's just in Brazil. That's not include 27 projects in Ecuador. You had projects in Peru and just all over. So you know there's local people working on that. It's always insane to take and see whenever, like a steel plant or a refinery is what basically the town thrives off of. That's, you know, that's what the town's economy, where the lifeblood is. $500,000 people. All those projects. That's at least, just in Peru alone, 23 different towns that there's a lot of people now that don't have like 500,000 just off of one company. Bro, it's, and there's a history of corruption, if I'm not mistaken, in Brazilian politics. At some point in time, people get tired of stuff and they take matters into their own hands. I hope for the sake of the Brazilian people that things can get better. Like, that's just absolutely horrendous, man. 500,000 people unemployed because of one freaking company. Y'all be good to each other. Love yourselves. Peace.